Live from New York, it's Benefits with Friends. I'm your host, Lou Bernardi. Thank you for joining us today, season 2, episode 2, and we have a return guest from season 1, Nancy Giacalone. Giacolone was actually on our most popular episode from season 1. It was Battle of the Benefit Advisors. She and Christy Gupton went head to head, and I'm going to bring Nancy right in. There's no reason to keep Nancy. No one keeps Nancy in the corner.
That's right.
So yeah, if I remember correctly, you and Christy battled. She took a little bit of a lead, and it came clawing back, and I think it ended up in a tie.
I think she might have edged me out just a little.
No, I don't know. I'll go back. I'm going to go look at the replay, but yeah, it was it was a fun episode. It was a very popular one. I mean, everybody who joined stayed the whole time. They couldn't wait, but I wanted to have you back on because this is more of a dialogue today, not a game show type thing. You know, season 2 is really dedicated to the American healthcare consumer. You know, we're both very passionate. We'll get into that. Really trying to help reset employer expectations around their benefits, particularly healthcare, but all benefits, right? You know, we're not exclusively health insurance, but that is, one of the biggest spends, of course, for most businesses. So I'm gonna stop there for a second and let you introduce yourself to the folks out there.
Well, so you're coming live from New York. I'm coming live from Gig Harbor, Washington, the big metropolis. Not really. We are about 40 minutes southwest of Seattle, out here in the lovely Pacific Northwest. It's a beautiful day. And I am the owner, founder of Olympic Crest Insurance, which has been in business for 26 plus years. And we're a boutique benefits agency working with employers, individuals, and Medicare recipients as well.
Awesome. So combined, I don't know who edges who out, but this is my 31st year. So,
I didn't say how long I've been in the industry.
Exactly. I know. I'm not going to ask either, but definitely know we're combined 60 years of experience, and probably very similar, different. You know, we're in different areas, but benefits. Actually, probably the trend of the current managed care started on the West Coast. And then everything kind of moves its way towards the East Coast and down to Florida and then up. But, for me, managed care, which I think has done a lot of damage, in hindsight to businesses and employees, really entered this marketplace in the early 90s. We were still holding on to those indemnity plans that if there's anybody out there who's been in the business or been in HR or benefits, misses their Chubb and Guardian and US Life and Home Life and all of those plans, which, at the time had their problems controlling costs. And managed care seemed like a saving grace, but it's really, I think, been anything but that. If you had to give it a scorecard, it's not doing very well for the average employer or patient or employee who has to deal with rising premiums and especially the excessive out-of-pocket costs. And I'm sure that's no different where you are in Washington State. So, for those of you that don't know Nancy, she's very pretty outspoken. Not like she's a very, very respected advisor doing very creative things. And she and I are in a bunch of different organizations where really, I know for me, started kind of 5 years ago. I just started seeing things that I didn't like, got certain glimpses into the cost versus the prices. Things started to make a little bit more sense of why things were spiraling out of control. And I felt like I had no one to talk to about it, and met people through LinkedIn who were experiencing the same things. I think some people had a head start. They were a little bit more advanced. Others, maybe behind. But, I think some of the organizations that we're part of have collectively allowed us to collaborate, share wins, losses, and experiences, and really has escalated it. So I'm so happy that you agreed to join me today because, you're certainly one of the people I look up to and, love seeing and talking and hearing. And you get a lot more stage time than me. I got to work on that for sure.
I'm cuter than you are, Lou.
Absolutely. And better personality too. I mean, just more likable. I'm just an average guy.
Oh, you're super likable.
So I'm trying. So, for those of you that don't know me, if you're joining today, I am the Boo. So I coined that phrase last year. So I'm essentially an insurance advisor, broker, consultant, but I call myself the Boo, which is benefit optimization officer, which is really what we're trying to do. I know, Nancy, you're a Boo also. In my heart, you're definitely a Boo, because optimizing benefits really should be what employers are trying to do. So, the title of today's show is HR Leaders Making a Difference in the Post-COVID Era. So I don't know do you have any thoughts just about that phrase? Like, what does that mean to you?
Well, you and I chatted a little bit, prior to the show, and we were kind of talking about how we could approach this particular topic. And as you mentioned, I'm known for being a little bit outspoken in this industry. And one of the things that I push against is generalizations and saying everybody has to do things one way, and that the only good advisor is one who's advising clients with 1,000+ lives and doing millions of creative things. And we hear it from the coaching, we hear it in this industry. Oh, you've got to get to the CFO, you've got to get to the CEO, and that's who your conversation needs to be with. And I feel really strongly that the HR directors and leaders play such a pivotal role in the success or failure of a benefit program. They cannot be left out of the conversation. And I think that sometimes in this industry, they're treated a little bit like second-class citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And I am vehemently opposed to that. I think that optimizing a benefit program is an opportunity for an HR leader to shine and to create wins on both sides. They can create wins with the company with opportunities for savings, and they can create wins for the employees with opportunities for better health benefits.
Yeah, there's no question. I agree 1,000%. Benefits. There's no denying the cost is significant, right? So you do want to connect with the financial minds of the business, right? Ultimately, HR needs to sell this, I think, probably to their CEOs, COOs, CFOs, right? But there's no one more in touch with the needs of the employees of the organization than HR. You just can't deny that. And I do think that I posted something. We have a campaign going on right now, which is, elevating HR to where they deserve to be. Let's face it, HR, if you're an HR person out there, you wear more hats than there are hats at a company. Anything that needs to get done can be dumped on HR and they'll get it done. But for that reason, it is very difficult because, you and I are talking benefits differently than probably a traditional insurance broker, right?
Yes.
We do need a lot more of their time and attention in order for them to understand what we've seen and why doing it differently is so important. Because if you keep doing it the same way, you're going to get the same results, right?
Right. And that's honestly, Lou, what I think that the HR leader is the key to the success of a benefit program.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as selling it to the CEO or C-suite, I don't think it's a tough sell for the HR, because especially if we're looking at opportunities for savings,
Right.
They're like, okay. But what happens when we sell from the top down is it feels like a burden to that HR department. Like you just put one more thing on my desk. Like you said, there's not enough hats to describe some of the things. And now you're going to give me one more thing. That's
Right.
kind of a big thing. So
Yeah.
if we can engage HR at the level of, we want to do something that's going to make it better for you. It's going to be better for the employees. It's going to be better for the company. Win, win, win.
Right.
Then we have a different conversation. And I think that's why it's so important for HR leaders to understand the types of things that we're talking about and not immediately shut their minds off to, oh my goodness, this means I'm going to have to do some more work.
Right.
And I don't mean that in disrespectfully by any stretch of the imagination, because we all know that they're very overworked. But if we start there and we help them understand all of the ways it can benefit the people that they serve, which are technically the employees,
Right.
It puts them in a better position, and we sell it to them, or we present it to them in such a way that it's highly retellable to the C-suite. It puts them in a position to again potentially advance their career as a result of adopting something that we're talking about.
Right. And that's why it's so crucial, because, you know, I use the word groomed a lot, because brokers have been groomed, account executives at insurance carriers have been groomed, employers have been groomed slowly but steadily over the last 25 years to just think this is the way it is. The claims are the claims. The only thing that you can do in order to control cost is change carriers, where you just have a second company essentially willing to buy the business potentially at a lower rate, or passing more on to the employees. And that's the important lesson to be learned here, is that cycle has now taken place for 25 plus years in managed care, and a $5 copay in the early first years of managed care is now potentially a $17,000 out of pocket. And it could be a first dollar out of pocket for employees. So what we're really just trying to ask employers to do is jump off the mouse wheel, for a second. Not talk to us. I mean, that's great. But I think the reason for this show for me is to help elevate the IQ of the American healthcare consumer. That's what I call the HR and the C-suite, really. And members as well, because they make decisions just based on what's going to come out of my paycheck, without understanding benefits. The average IQ is very, very low. So this show is dedicated to helping them learn more, increase their IQ, so that they can properly set their expectations of their current partnerships. Knowing what to ask is essential. So I know we have a question.
Yeah, it's a really good one too, Lou.
Yeah.
It is from Darren. It says, what are both your thoughts on HR executives not being as sensitive to savings as the C-suite? Is turning a blind eye to the financial ROI of a health plan a legitimate perspective? Or should benefit consultants pivot and make an appeal to HR that $100,000 of savings allows 2 new hires? And I think that is a spot on comment, because again, if our entree or entry or our main point of contact is HR, we have to sell to what matters to them.
Mm-hmm.
Do they need more employees? Do they need more in their budget to be able to provide wage increases? We just saw that the COLA increase for 2023 is the highest it's ever been. I think I saw it was 8.2%.
Right.
I mean, that's significant. So if there's ways that we can do things, we can find money, the HR can find money in the budget to treat the employees better, to maybe hire an assistant, whatever it might be. Those are the triggers that change the mindset from this is more work to, oh my goodness, this investment in this work is going to provide dividends to me and to the company.
Well, yeah, no, I agree 100%, because I don't like to put anybody in a bubble either, right? So you do have companies out there where the C-suite is more involved, is actually very involved, or they're only involved to the extent that they set the allowance for next year's cost increase, right? They budget 5%, right? And that's a problem, because when you think the only thing you can do is pass more costs on, and you're starting with a 20% increase that magically gets negotiated down to 10, to go from 10 to 5 under the traditional model requires, a trade-off in passing more cost in the form of contributions or benefits. And I think it's very important for the benefit decision makers out there to understand that. So my goal, and I know that yours probably, is not to save money. That is not the primary motive behind the approach that we're taking, but it is the result of the approach that we're taking, right? So by doing benefits differently, for me, and taking the focus off the insurance cost and then placing it on the quality and cost of the healthcare that's being consumed, allows us to restructure the plans, provide employees and the HR team with resources that the traditional carriers just aren't. Well, they're capable of providing the type of data that's necessary in order to make an informed decision. They just don't, because it doesn't serve their ultimate purpose, which, I hate to say it, there's no denying, it's their stock price.
Right.
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 So
Yeah. I agree. I agree with all of that. And I do, because I work in that world as well. The
Mhm.
one thing that I will always put a stake in the ground about is that we have to also consider all of the employers out there.
Yeah.
And again, they don't all have over 100 employees. As a matter of fact, only 8% of employers have more than 100 employees in
Oh,
the
is that true?
entire
Okay. Wow.
United States. 8%.
Yeah.
So the other 92% have under 100 employees.
Sure.
In your state, that's considered small group. In my state, it's under 50.
Right.
So little differences there, but we don't discriminate. We don't choose. We don't say to a group of 7, we won't work with you because you only have 7 employees. I
Right.
have 5 employees. I'm not going to say that to another employer. But the thing is, with a group of 7, sometimes we cannot make it financially viable for them to do all the cool things we'd like them to do.
Right.
We just can't,
Right.
because
Absolutely.
they might have a large ongoing health condition. So then that means we do need to stay within the traditional system of insurance. But as advisors, we still cannot just put that to the side and say, oh, that's a no-brainer. That's fully insured. We have nothing more to do, because we still have more work to do, and we have more that we can help the HR leaders, because again, let's use that group of 7. They probably don't have an HR leader. It's
Right.
probably the owner who has even more hats than an HR person, but we can help them continue to walk along that path to get to a point where they can potentially make some changes. But we can't take a broad brushstroke, I know I'm going to say that wrong, to the entire industry and say everybody has to do it this way, because quite frankly, it doesn't work yet.
Right.
We can continue moving that direction, and we continue educating people, and particularly HR leaders, but we also have to be cognizant of, while it's not about saving money, money is a pretty big portion of the decision making process.
It gets it over the finish line for sure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are some companies that would pay more for better quality for their employees. There's no question, right? And I couldn't agree with you more, because on this journey, which you kind of get sucked into this self-insured world, right? For me, is 100 plus. In some states, that could be 5 plus, because the ultimate ability to kind of extract all of the artificial costs, or as much as possible, and the and the prices, is by self-insuring, because you can leave the insurance
Absolutely.
carrier, no question. However, along this path, we have still found technology companies and guidance companies that are crucial. At the end of the day, we want so Dave Chase was my guest 2 weeks ago, right? And Dave, very really well. So I use the term American healthcare consumer. For me, that's many different types of people. It's the employer who thinks of themselves as an insurance consumer, but they're really purchasing access to healthcare. It's just the way they choose to finance it is with insurance.
100%.
Yeah.
Health insurance is nothing but a transfer of risk. That's all
Absolutely.
it is. And
Right.
we've confused the terms healthcare and health insurance over the years.
Right.
Darren had another really good question here, Lou. It says,
Yeah.
what are your unfiltered thoughts on wellness programs? He should not have asked for my unfiltered thoughts because I will share them.
Yes.
And what are HR's thoughts on it? If the views differ, how do you honestly address that in prospect client meetings? So in my opinion, I think that they are fairly meaningless. I think you spend a lot of money for very little ROI.
Mm-hmm.
HR tends to believe it's going to make a big difference and it's going to make employees very happy. So I do definitely see, at least in my experience, I do see there's always a little bit of friction around that. It's kind of funny that he asked this question because I posted about this morning, and I had a large client a couple of years ago. They were determined, they wanted to put in a wellness program. They were going to spend a lot of money to do it. And I looked right over at their vending machine and I said, we should probably start there and replace some of the high sugar energy drinks, some of the snacks. And let's do that first before you spend money, because it's going to have a really positive impact. And his response to me was, the owner of this large company says, I can't do that because then I'd lose the productivity of my employees.
Right.
So you have to decide what is it you're trying to accomplish with wellness, because it's probably not going to really show up in the ROI in your health plan. It's just not. Wellness programs tend to reward people that are already doing the right things anyway.
I put this up because I think this is a great segue to this. So decision maker, when I say the benefit decision makers, that's how I rephrase, because we're not always talking to just HR directors or heads of people or chief, HR. Sometimes we are talking to the C-suite, but the benefit decision makers determine what they need to do to carry out the decision, and will start taking action and implementing the change or transformation for the company. And I think when you talk about a wellness plan, what's the goal of the wellness plan? Are you just checking something off because our competition's doing it, and then you might have to do it for that reason? I've been involved with, I worked as a GA for many years with a very, very large GA, thousands of employees throughout the country. And they had wellness promotional competitions throughout the year. And in my opinion, they were good for bonding, right?
Yeah, they're great for culture.
Absolutely. I think but if you think you're going to reduce your healthcare spend because you're offering a wellness company, you're probably mistaken. You probably won't get the value out of the cost of the wellness program, because there are some very expensive ones out there.
You absolutely won't.
Right. Now, if I'm not going to say you're not going to reach maybe some people who are going to take action.
They're good, right?
Yeah.
It's just that you have to understand what is your intention, because they're not going to impact the bottom line of your insurance.
Right.
We have another really good question here from Frank Cohn. How would you address an HR veteran that's already tried progressive plan designs and been burned in because their workload increased, agreed, and the implementation was weak or poorly communicated by a bad broker? Do you engage to find out why it didn't work from their opinion and try to work backwards to earn trust? Absolutely. And the thing about what we do, Lou, is that there's so much that really hinges on how much we know and how hard we're willing to go to bat, because there are people that are willing to do the things that we're doing not very well, but because they want to be able to, like you say, check a box.
Right.
And somebody said, oh, hey, can you do this? And they're like, yeah, I can do it because it looks good on paper. But to Frank's point, there's going to be more than a few HR people out there that have been burned by some of these plans in the past.
There's no
we saw it. Did you have lifestyle health plans in your state, Lou?
Yes.
Yeah, so did we. I put my company on one.
Right.
Yeah, it was terrible. So we all know that there are bad brokers, consultants, whatever label we want to put on them. There's bad programs.
Yes.
And there's bad insurance companies.
Right.
That's just, unfortunately, you're going to find that whatever industry you look at, there's going to be a portion of that population that is not going to be doing the right thing. And
it's not a reason to turn your back on progress or the solutions that the concept is undeniable.
Yes.
It's the execution that's essential. And I say very often, it took me 30 years to get 5 years experience
Yep.
because I was the expert. I was the GA. I was the broker's broker helping hundreds of other brokers with their benefits. And I was great at selling insurance, renewing insurance. I knew the plans inside and out, but I did not understand the behind the scenes until you actually see under the hood or behind the curtain or whatever you want to, phrase you want to use. You can't really fathom what's going on in the PBM world with pharmacy prices, that the rebates that the companies that we've all come to trust. Now, it's business and they're allowed to do it, right? But is it right that they're charging 2 times, 3 times, 5 times the cost of medications and then charging the employer that full cost? Now, the employee is only paying their portion. No one sees what's actually being paid in claims until you see it, right? And then behind the scenes, collecting a rebate, but not giving the net price to the employer. Until you see that, you don't know that it's going on. You have peace of mind. But once you know that's going on, you really just simply can't go back to doing it the same old way. Now, that doesn't mean you have to self-insure, but you do want an employer needs to elevate their IQ, and the members need to understand their IQ, right? An MRI on the left side of me could cost $600. An MRI to the right side of me, I did that backwards, but I think for the show, whatever, could be $3,000, and the charge is $7,000. You need to know that. That's important for anybody, fully insured, self-insured. It doesn't matter, because when you're walking around with a, let's just say, $5,000 deductible, and you just blindly follow where your doctor tells you to go, who very high percentage chances works for the healthcare system now, and himself doesn't know, or herself don't have the prices. They're just told, send people here. And when you send them there and you just go blindly without asking, you wouldn't do that with anything else in your life.
No, absolutely not. And I love that you brought that point up, Lou, because that's what I'm talking about, is that group of 7, that group of 35, whatever it is, that says, I'm not ready to go all the way down the path of unbundling and a self-funded program, but
Right.
they do have an HSA, and maybe the employer is contributing to it. When you start seeing that, the education, that's where we come in, because not only do we have to help educate the HR leaders, we have to educate the members on how to find that information. We can implement the tools that can make that information accessible to them, so that they can have direction on, okay, here you need an MRI, here's the 3 places you can go, and here's the cost.
Right.
You're going to the pharmacy, look up the cost of your drug before you walk in that pharmacy and find out which is the best way. I had a prescription for what was it? Oh, it was a muscle relaxing, because I had pinched a nerve in my back a couple weeks ago. Went to the actually, my husband picked it up for me. It was $158. He came home and I just said, well, that's not right. Looked it up on my Good RX app and it was like $56.
Right.
Marched back into the pharmacy the next day and I'm like, you need to rerun this. By the time it was all said and done, I paid $45.
Unbelievable. Right.
But that's the things that we have to do, and the HR leaders can do. That's not a lot of extra work.
Right.
That's not a lot of extra work, but that is something that HR leaders can do to, again, become the hero in their company.
And getting back to Frank's question, and it is a great question, because when I talk to, benefit decision makers that say, well, we tried that, it didn't work for us. You need to follow up and have a deeper conversation. Well, how did you try it? Let's just assume for a second it's an employer that is over 100, can self-insure, and it's appropriate that they do, because it's not right for everybody. It's appropriate that they do, and they self-insure with the same insurance carrier they've used for the last 5 or 10 years. They self-insured, yes, but they didn't get the benefits of the new self-insured marketplace, let's just call it, that's out there with all of the, I always say, there's an alternative universe in healthcare, and there's an alternative universe in health insurance. There are vendors that, unfortunately, most employers are never made aware of. They don't understand that doctors themselves are having the same frustrations and boycotting the managed care industry the way brokers like us are, because it's just not working for the people who really matter the most, which is the employer, their member who becomes a patient when they enter the healthcare system, and then the actual practitioners of healthcare themselves. I put this up here because when I say modern, as a noun, a person who advocates or practices a departure from traditional styles or values. And that goes to Frank's point. You can't just go back to doing it the old-fashioned way because it failed. We'd all be walking around in the dark because Edison wouldn't have invented the light bulb. You have to try again. You have to learn from that. Maybe it's a matter of picking a new partner. Maybe it's not. Maybe the expectations weren't set properly. Maybe the experience with the particular vendors wasn't vetted properly. And I think that's what's so important to me with these organizations like Health Rosetta and Aspirational Healthcare and a couple of others, because it's those shared experiences that allow us to, I know that I can reach out to you, and say, hey, have you ever, or your name is being used on this person's website or this company's website. Can you tell me how that went?
Right.
Have you had experience with them? We're looking at a multiple, an MSK vendor, multiple sclerosis, to maybe address issues within a certain population where the data is telling us that that is something that's makes sense to do. Or maybe it's diabetes management or whatever the case might be. But it's certainly not a reason to just throw in the towel and say, let me go back to, dealing with those prior vendors because it was more workload. Now, there's no denying a perception. So if you put 1,000 employers, HR directors, CXOs in a room and ask them to raise their hand and put it down when they disagree with the comment, and you ask them, would saving on your healthcare cost make sense? No one would lower their hands. They'd still say, yes, that's me. Do you think it would be impactful if you could offer a benefit plan with richer benefits at the same cost or even lower cost? No one would. But if you start saying, well, it's going to be a lot more work, hands will go down immediately. So you have to, but it is going to be a little bit more work. For me, the work that's involved is really the time spent getting to understand it.
Well, let's talk about this, Lou, because you kind of brought it up a little bit earlier. When you go buy a car or a television or a cell phone or a computer, do you just buy the one that's closest and easiest?
No.
Or do you put in some work? Do you research to find out what the features are, what the options are, where's the best price, what's the warranty? We all put effort into those things, but for some reason, we've become conditioned by our healthcare system that we are powerless to have any impact in our own purchasing, even our own care. We go into the doctor and we nod and we walk across the hall and we get whatever test they say and we walk out and we have no idea how much we spent till we get a bill in the mail.
Right.
Like you say, this does not work this way in any other aspect of our lives. I know, and I'm sure you have done the same thing in the past. I would go to a doctor that was part of a major hospital, provider system. And of course, they want me to sign all my financial rights away, but they won't tell me how much it's going to cost.
Right.
I'm sorry, but I'm done. I'm not doing that anymore. You better be able to tell me how much it's going to cost or I'm walking out the door.
Well, most employers, most people just in general don't understand that there's protections that have been put in place, right? More onus has been put on the healthcare systems and the insurers to be able to provide that information before you have to get the care.
Well, yes, it has been put on them, but in a machine readable file that the average person is not going to access or be able to understand.
Right.
Hopefully that we continue down this path and we do make the information more available to the member at time of service or prior to time of service so that they can understand it. But a lot of these sweeping gestures are gestures at this point, not
Yeah.
really practical for the average person.
No, there's no question. But I still think it's important that the consumer understand that it's there, because consumers change the way industries do business. If the American healthcare consumer starts taking their business elsewhere, which they have started to do, and I can tell that by listening to the posturing and the terminology that's being used by the status quo. They are putting out emails and advertisements and things talking about, using the lingo of the new world, let's just say, of benefits. They're not committed to it, but
No,
they have to at least provide the perception that they put the consumer first. They're your partner. I've noticed that the healthcare systems and the health insurers are now starting to cannibalize each other, because they know, and it's going to be slow, they know that certain hidden profit centers are going to dry up. There's no question that over time they will dry up. Larger companies get it, I think, more than smaller companies, right? They need the data. They want the data. They understand, I think, more fully the power of this, because just the law of large numbers, they have to do it, right? Because their competition is doing it more and more often. But as that trickles down into the smaller groups, the thousands and the hundreds, and then the under 100-person groups, that business will go elsewhere if the status quo doesn't start doing business differently. And I just have to believe that we're making a dent. And the proof is in the pudding. It's in the case studies that I'm sure you have and that we have, that we're starting to put together. And now that the dust has settled, the proof is really kind of undeniable. And I'll give you an example. We have a client, about 250 employees in New Jersey, that for years with us was with Aetna and self-insured. We were talking to them for years that we need to leave this model. It's just the prices the costs were just astronomical. But the main team of decision makers with the board of directors actually thought that Aetna was their health care. I can't leave Aetna. My doctor's an Aetna doctor. But your doctor takes everything, every company, every network. Your doctor's not an Aetna doctor, but we could not get them to budge. And then there was a change in ownership of the decision-making team. And the new decision-making team, who were the junior people previously, came in because they heard the conversation, said, we need to do this. We moved them self-insured. We did not change one thing about their benefits. They didn't want to. They wanted no disruption, and they were expecting some disruption. We changed them to an independent TPA with an independent PBM and a few other things, not really much going on. They were $2 million below expected costs.
yeah. Well, the thing that I think that a lot of employers don't understand is when they say I'm self-funded with Aetna, all they really mean is they're experience rated with Aetna,
Right.
because they don't get any of the benefits of independent self-funding.
Right. And for the people that are out there that don't know what that means, is that because there's, especially in the pharmacy end, right? There's so much. I haven't done an analysis yet. When we get the data, which is sometimes hard, there's other ways of getting it, as you know, where you can extract some, meaningful data. Maybe not everything that you can get when you're really working with a real robust, TPA. I haven't done an analysis yet where the expected savings wasn't more than 30%. And that's without changing anything. That's just if the formulary is exactly the way it is today, and every single person would have filled their prescription identically. So we were skeptical until we did it. And then we saw it. And we're like, wow, they actually outperformed what we were expecting. And that's the thing, is unfortunately, until you've done it, you don't know. And you have to evaluate it. And I'm a realist. I understand that the conversation is the most important thing, because the clients that we're getting today started to listen to our conversations 3 years ago. And then in the back of their mind, they got their renewal in 2020 and said, he was right. And then in 2021 got their renewal and said, oh, wow, when is this going to end? Why? And then we really just planted some questions in their head that they started to ask, that everybody should, pretty much ask. And the most powerful question is, well, why? Why is the trend 13%? Why is my pooling charge this? Why is my retention that? On fully insured groups? Like, why? Explain that to me. I could tell you from working with so many brokers over the years, most couldn't even tell you what a pooling charge is. So I think for me, the most powerful thing to arm benefit decision makers is just start questioning things, asking the people that you partner with and you trust, because they may be capable of doing more, but don't think your expectations are there yet. And I use this example because you talk to HR directors, and I do as well. Most of them think that their employees aren't capable of change. Oh, they won't do that. And then you ask them, and you brought it up earlier, do they buy TVs? Do they lease cars? Do they shop? Have they heard of Amazon? What we're essentially trying to do for the consumers, turn the lights on so that they can kind of see for themselves, this is what's happening. Do you want to be, do you want to partake in this? Or let's talk about what solution B could do for you. I use this analogy because I'm very visual. Here's your benefits today. And you open it up. In-network benefit, out-of-network benefit, if you're lucky enough. Well, I don't even know if you're lucky if you have an out-of-network benefit, but let's argument's sake, here's your plans today. What if you had a third fold where your out-of-pocket cost for your employees was less than or even potentially zero? Because that's happening on a lot of health plans. Just absorb that for a second. Would you be able to sell that to get the best talent? If you could offer that plan and potentially it even costs less for your employees to participate in that plan. Because we've had clients and we've had prospects who say, especially over the last few years during the COVID era, the feedback is our benefits stink. We interviewed 20 people, and not one of them, and some of the the responses we got back from people we made offers to were, your benefits are not as rich as your competition. I don't know if have you heard that from any prospects, clients that have come to you?
Well, we're in a tech heavy area, so yes, we do fight that, especially in the tech industry, because they're
Right.
just looking for benefits on top of benefits. So, however, the only issue there is that oftentimes that's a whole nother story. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we're in a war for talent right now, both to retain and attract, and
Mhm.
anything that we can do with benefit programs that provide stickiness
Mhm.
and is absolutely a benefit. And so again, as HR leaders, this is an opportunity for you to pull a lever that probably others in your industry are not, and potentially make your company more attractive. So that would be a good takeaway, I think.
And is there any other reason really, other than since the Affordable Care Act, employers of 50 plus FTEs essentially have to offer benefits at some level of benefits, right? They don't really have to. They can choose to pay the penalty, or they can offer some other plans. But why are you offering benefits to begin with? You have to ask yourself that question. What is the purpose of our benefit plan? Are we doing it because we have to do it, or are we doing it because we want to do it?
Yeah, it's primarily attraction and retention.
I think so, right? We had employers, it was actually kind of comical. We had employers after 2010 call us, clients for a long time call us and say, you mean I didn't have to offer health insurance? I was like, no, you didn't have to. There was no law. Like, we thought there was a law. I'm like, no, I don't know when you started offering it, but you offer it. And I reminded them, you offered it because if you didn't, your employees would leave and your competition would get the best talent. And then, oh yeah, right. Owners think about the price tag. CFOs think about the modeling and the finances, and HR I think has. That's why getting back to HR and why they're so crucial is that they're the ones who have the heartbeat on what's important to their employees, right? What type of benefits? Because there is no cookie cutter solution. There is no cookie cutter benefit level, right? Some companies are perfectly happy with high deductible health plans for their population. You need to know that, right? If you have a company where that's not going to be an attractive offering, because of whatever the demographics of the group or the region that you're in and what your competition is offering, then that's going to be a mistake to offer that, right? I mean, it's I'm sure that you run into that very differently. And it's very for us.